Okay. All right. Now we'll make this official. Thank you everyone for joining us today for a kind of crash course on prepping for the 2022 legislative session, which is coming right up. My name is Eric Peterson. I'm the president of the board of the Utah Headliners chapter of the Society of Professional Journalists. I'm also the executive director of the Utah Investigative Journalism Project. And this is an event we're kind of co-hosting. So I'm wearing that hat on both those roles and really excited for this event. Excited to have our speakers here not only walk us through, how to follow the session, but what to expect coming up in the session. I'm just going to give a quick shout out also. If you're interested in becoming an SPJ member, you can go to our website at utahspj.com. And there's a little join button. We'll kind of tell you about it and the different rates for joining. And that includes, even if you're not a journalist, there's a very affordable, I think it's only $20 a year if you just want to be a supporter of SPJ and our mission of supporting the First Amendment, public access to information, things like that. You're always welcome. And if you are a journalist and you're not a member, we'd love to have you. You really help out. Not only supporting what we do, but just giving us extra feedback and being a part of what we do and giving us guidance on the events and programming we do in the future. Okay, that's my little spiel about that. I will throw that link up in the chat. And right now I'm going to turn it over to Lindsay Whitehurst to kind of introduce our guests.
Hi, thanks everyone for coming. I'm Lindsay Whitehurst. I'm with Associated Press. I cover the Utah legislature and many other Utah things. And we are so glad you're here. And we're thank you so much to our panelists. Mark here is the chief of staff for the Utah Senate, and he'll help us walk through the website, which is truly a terrific website. And that is not just Hometown Pride speaking. There are lots and lots of great things you can find on that website, but it's really good to have a guide to get through it, because like any great website, you can, there are many layers to it. So it's good to have somebody here to walk us through all of the really good public access ways that you can follow what's going on in the legislature, whether you're a journalist or a citizen. So, and then after him, we'll have Ben Winslow and Katie McKellar. Ben's with Fox 13. He's been doing journalism in Utah for more than 20 years, and he has covered some huge stories in our state, and he does a great job on Capitol Hill. And like a lot of reporters, he does a really good job on Twitter too. And Katie McKellar is with Deseret News. She's on the Utah In-Depth team. She leads their political coverage on the state level. And she is a multi-award winner and also a terrific follow on Twitter. So I'll let you take it away, Mark, where I'm planning to have him chat with us for the first half of this and then move on to Katie and Ben. So thanks again, Mark.
Hey, well, thanks everyone. Good to see everyone again. Eric, it's been a little while, so good to see you. Thanks for having me on. I'm super excited to be able to take a few minutes and go through the website. It's an important part of what we do up here, and that's the communications and working with our friends in the media to get the information out. And whether it's a good bill or a bad bill, we need that information out there. We need the vetting process to happen. And I can't tell you how many times we've heard from constituents that said, hey, I heard about this bill from the media. I want to learn more, or I think I have something to offer, or have you thought about this or that? And I know one thing for sure, people want to pass bills that work. They don't want to pass bills that don't work. And so getting that feedback out there is important. And so we appreciate the role that you all have. I started here in the Senate 4 years ago, and one of the things that they had done is the daily media availability. And that was one of the things that was really important that we continue to do, to offer that so that we can have that constant communication back and forth. But I wanted to take a few minutes and kind of walk through the website. In my previous capacity in the Lieutenant Governor's office, I worked a lot on elections, and I think besides education bills, elections is probably the top number of bills that are out there. So I got pretty proficient in using the website from that type of perspective of being able to be kind of basically a state entity that's trying to offer and track bills, offer feedback, track bills, get information and input from the county clerks, get that to the media as well. There's always a lot of questions, and so there was a certain specific use for it. In my capacity up here, it's a little more difficult because I essentially track all bills, so it's hard to do that on a website. And so some of you may have mastered the website even better than I have. And so I hope if you have questions or suggestions or things that you've learned, feel free to raise your hand or interrupt. I don't know if we want to go through Lindsay or Eric, but feel free to chime in if you have anything to offer. So I'm going to try to share my screen here and pull it up, and then we'll begin. All right, looks like it's working. So this is the le.utah.gov website. This is the home page, and you can see front and center is the search. I think most people just for a lot of quick things, they just want to go in and do a quick search. If you wanted to do elections, let's just say you'll pull it up. The first filters, or you can look at everything related to election. No, I want to look at bills. And I want to look at bills from 2022, so I have that filter there. So you can look through and quickly sort through the elections. Oftentimes, if you're like me, you don't know the bill name, but you know the subject matter. You can do a quick search based on the subject. It also allows you to do searching just through the code, through the rules, or through budget, which are some really good filters there if you wanted to fine tune your search. You can also do it by committee. So that's kind of the quick and the easiest way to get a lot of information. We do offer a lot of our quick resources that people like here under the resources. I think many of you will be interested. Significant dates. When's the last day of the session? Okay, let's look it up really fast. Here it is, last day, the session, March 4th. That's probably one you already have circled on your calendar. But there's other things here. For example, what are the deadlines for appropriation bills, for numbering, for action? And so it's really helpful to be able to have that quickly. But what's even more helpful, at least for me, is the weekly schedule, which is right below that. And so you look up here right now, we have the first 2 weeks that are approved and are out there. Some of you just want to know what the schedule might look like for a week from now. So let's look at the Senate week 1. Super helpful, at least for me. What can we anticipate? Well, 10 to 11:50, you're kind of going through the opening day ceremonies, but it also shows you what to expect with the committee times, the caucuses and the lunchtime. We have the governor's state of the state. So we had the first 2 weeks are approved. We continue to update those throughout the session. And of course, always subject to change. As you can see, we put them up, and I think an hour later we already revised it. So they're always tweaking, but hopefully that's helpful for each of you to have, because you're seeing the same thing that we're giving to legislators. There's also other items on here. You can look at the bill request. That's helpful if you want to look at by senator, if you want to look by representative, even subject. I mentioned elections earlier, but fireworks. You can do a search. We've got 2 bills on fireworks that right now in progress, local firework regulation and firework restrictions. So it's really helpful if you're doing a story and just know the subject generally. You can do a quick search through that mechanism, or you can search by committee depending on the level of information that you want. And then of course, being able to do a customized printable report is helpful. I won't go through a lot of these things. This one, I think some of you like as well. I know I like it. This is the legislator bill request total. Yeah, Ben's shaking his head. He knows. He knows. So I look at this quite often. This will show the number of bills that are open for that individual legislator. Let's see, I think does it do a total? No, it didn't do a total, but I think there's another place you can get the totals, but you can see there the number of requests. Looks like my boss is not doing his job. He's got 0 bills open there. But not to fear, Senator Andrick's helping us out there with 25 bills. But kind of interesting to see the flow there of who has the number of bills there. This is a live database, so it's pulling it live, so you'll see it as it happens. I just saw this. I'll talk about it briefly. Virtual committee meetings. Many of you were probably participating last year in the session, and as we were heading into the session, the Delta variant was taking a strong hold at that point, and we were pretty concerned with how the session was looking. Fortunately, we were able to get through the session without really any major issues. A part of that is because we did offer, and a lot of people took advantage of the virtual option. And it's a big deal. If you would have asked me a couple of years ago if the legislature is ever going to put video cameras into committee rooms and stream everything live, maybe hell no would have been my answer, perhaps. I just wasn't in the cards, but COVID's really changed things, and now we get more people are able to participate in the legislative process, including reporters, than we've ever had. That you can be in multiple meetings at the same time and still be able to follow and track things, that you can not have to be up here at the Capitol. And obviously there is a concern with being in the middle of this pandemic still, and so this allows you to be able to fully participate. For the public as well, they're able to not only listen in, but they can participate and be involved in the committee meetings. So that will be available this year, not just for the public, but for legislators as well. It's a critical thing that we're offering for people to be able to still participate but feel safe in the pandemic. Okay, so this is, and I just went through this really quick. Oh, let me go through it. We have a quick link to the calendar. This is helpful to see what's going on in any given week. So you can see today there's no official public meetings up here. Next week already we filled in with our floor time and with whatever committee meetings that have already been scheduled. Keep in mind, committee meetings typically post they post no later than 24 hours ahead of time, and during the session they keep it's pretty close to the 24 hours. So you'll want to look the night before, and you'll be able to quickly see what the committee meetings are that are for the next day, with the quick links to the agenda. You can see there, and this shows you the location of where it's at. So just helpful. I use this quite often to look through and get an overview of what's happening. It's hard to see if there's any questions, but if there are, again, just feel free. I'm not sure if they can even interrupt me, but you can probably raise your hand or type a question if something comes up. This shows my legislators. This is actually not my legislators. I had a constituent call on an issue. I wanted to know who his senators were. It just happened to be that his senator was President Adams and his representative was Hawks. But I used that to find out whose people's representation are. So it's helpful. Up here at the top, you can quickly look if you wanted to look at the Senate roster. I won't spend too much time on this because I want to get into the really good stuff, but this is quickly, you can see the pictures, see the political party. You can click on Senator Bramble, get his contact information, get some personal information. This is always helpful, be able to see the committees that he's on. And some people like to know what House districts that are within the Senate districts, and that's helpful as well. So the same thing for the House. They have a similar website that you can get information about each of the senators on there. Our staff contact information is on here. If you need to get a hold of us, that's always available as well. Okay, so let me now get into, we're already at 6:15, so I want to, or at 12:15, I want to keep hustling here. So the login. If you're able to log into the website, you're able to utilize so many tools that you're not otherwise able to. So I would encourage you to get in and create an account if you haven't already, and get set up. So I'm going to just log in really quick here, and I'm going to show you what tools get unpacked when you're able to log in here. So this really allows you to track bills, and by tracking bills, it allows you to sort those in different ways, allows you to put those into a spreadsheet. Sometimes you want to, you have your own tracking sheet. Sometimes if you're working with another entity, they have a tracking sheet, you want to be able to share with them. And it allows you to get alerts when there's action taken on a bill. It allows you to follow subjects. It allows you to follow committees. It allows you to look at a certain area of code and say, if a bill pops up that relates to this area of code, I want to know, and you'll get an alert. I mean, huge, powerful tools for people to be able to track and follow, because there is so much information that comes out of the legislature during the 45 days we're here. So I'm just going to start here. What are some bills I want to track? Well, SB 17 is one. SB, let's just go 18, and let's go with House Bill 34. How's that? So I'm going to add those. Okay, what am I tracking? Oh, the cigarette tax amendment, grazing advisory board, and the election modification. So that you're able to type in, obviously, all the bills that you want to track. If you have a long list, you can just hit, I want to get emails on all the bills. And now you saw that changed. I'll do it again. It changed, and it allows you to get emails now for each of those bills. And so when there is an action, when a sub comes out, when there's an amendment, you'll get notification. And you get it in at the same time as legislators. You're not getting it, except for the sponsor, of course, who's working on that. But you're getting the same notification when I get it. And there are particular bills that I do follow closely, and I want to know the second something happens on them. And so I go on here and I track them. Extremely helpful. It allows you, of course, to quickly see who the sponsors are, and this gives you the current status of where it's at. But let's go into SB 18. This is election modification. This was a committee bill that passed out of the interim unanimously. It looks like it's some election cleanup bills. And most of you know this, but of course, underlined language means it's adding. The strikeout means it's being stricken out. And wow, I got to get down here to the bottom before you really see info, but you can easily see here. Some of you might be aware on Google. I'm on Safari right now, but if you're on Google, there is an extension that you can add, which I actually love, and maybe I should have brought it up here, but it actually highlights the language that's added, and it does red for the language that's being struck out. And it just makes it a lot easier to read. We don't have that option for Safari that I know of. It is on Google. It is something that we've asked our IT guys to just incorporate into our website, because it's actually a pretty cool feature. It makes things a lot easier to read, especially when you're trying to read a lot of different bills. This here is the bill number on the very left there.
I was just going to ask, what's the name of that extension again, if you'd be able to share it for everybody?
I think it's just, I want to say it's Utah legislature or Utah legislative bills. I can look really quick when I'm off, and then I can text, and then we can put that up on in the chat room here. But I think it's Utah Legislature Extension, if I remember right.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's nice. So it was actually I think it was Connor Boyack that put that together, if I remember right. So it's very, very helpful. Let's scroll up to the top here of the bill and take a look at what we're seeing here. The status, it walks through. You can always look at what the status is on any bill. It's very helpful to watch it go through the process, to see where it's at. So by the time this is done, it will be quite lengthy. It will show the votes, whether the votes in committee, the votes on the floor, the second or third reading, and it's a feature that is always very helpful if you want to look at the vote counts and who voted for what. It's helpful, and as well as looking at the hearings. Of course, this was an interim bill, but we hasn't gone through any hearings, standing committee hearings yet. But if you did, you can go here, click on it, listen to the audio as well, which is very helpful. Going back to this page here, it's, at least for me, I looked at the drafting attorney analyst. Sometimes I need to touch base with them. I want to know who the floor sponsor is. And here, if they had multiple bills, like a substitutes or amendments, you'd be able to follow that here. So right now there's just one listed here because that's the introduced, but if it was amended or substitute, you would have different toggles there to be able to do it. Fiscal note, that's always huge, of course. You can click on here, quickly see that there's no fiscal impact on this bill, but if there was, you'd be able to follow that here. And I wonder, let's just go back. The cigarette tax amendment, looks like the House received the fiscal note from the analyst. So we might have a fiscal note here. Nope, I guess it was 0. So I thought maybe there was something there, but still huge. I guess I have to look to the chat room if anyone has any questions, but hopefully you feel free that you can do that. So if you had a long list here of bills, let's just keep going with SB 30, SB 45. We'll just keep adding bills. You can come down here and just do a download tool, and it will download those for you, and so you can put those into whatever format you want, or comment delimited list as well. That's helpful. Let me scroll across here as well. Sometimes you're following different committees. If you wanted to be able to say, I want to follow Executive Appropriations Committee, I want to track it. So when something happens, Executive Appropriations, you can click here. I've already added Government Operations. Now there's Executive Appropriations. So now I'm tracking it, and I'll send you an email anytime the agenda is created. And again, that's you're getting that at the same time as everyone else. So that's very helpful that it's instant information. As soon as the agenda comes out, you're receiving an email. This may not be as helpful to you, but I know for those that work on certain subject areas, it's really helpful. You add in a code section, and because it's hard to track every bill and look through it and say, does this affect campaign disclosures? But you can say, well, I want to follow campaign disclosures, and if a bill is going to affect that, then send me notification. So I'll go in here. 20A11 is the campaign financial disclosure section. I'm going to add that, and now it's going to tell me and give me a notification anytime there's a bill that falls within that code section there. So again, it may not be helpful to you, but I find it extremely helpful. It's just hard to try to track everything at the same time. This gives you notification. I mean, I'm interested, Ben. I mean, are you tracking every bill? I mean, or are you doing a couple of hot spots, bills that you do? I mean, I can't imagine what your email looks like.
I track a lot of bills, and I do use the email notifications for pretty much the bigger ones that I want to track all the way through the process. But yeah, I get several hundred emails a day during the session.
Yeah, I hear you there. Katie, do you use that the same way?
Kind of the same way, like the bigger things, I know you'll get a ton of notifications for them. A couple of years ago, I also used the app. I don't know if you wanted to talk about that, but that can be helpful too.
Yeah, that's great. Sliding over here, the subjects, if you're able to follow the subjects and get notification on those, Ben follows the beer tax, so we can make sure get notification there as well. And you can get the RSS feeds as well to your track on your track bills and new bills too. Some of you, and I know media have done this, you get a developer token. You get access to the back end data and tools, and you're able to incorporate that into your news website. I know oftentimes we get a lot of the media that pull from that, and that I know that's been really helpful for many of you. So just a lot of options, and really part of the reason we do have these options is because of each of you giving us feedback, giving us ideas, pushing the envelope a little bit, and trying to get to a place where we're providing the best information that we can. So I say that because hopefully, as you have thoughts or ideas or suggestions throughout the session or at any time, let us know, because that's the best way to help improve the website. And it's hard. We've got a lot of people using it for a lot of different reasons, and we have a limited number of resources, so we try to manage that. But you can see, each of these were drawn from someone having a great idea, and we work through it. So it's about 12:30 at this point. I went through that really quickly, but I think that gives you a good sense, an overview of the website. And Lindsay or Eric, I'm not sure if you want to take any questions. I don't know if we can, but happy to stay on a little bit if there are any.
We had one good one from J.R. Hardman, who asks, how do you figure out what the code is for a particular subject matter? My suggestion was to start with the online Utah code, but Mark, do you have any thoughts there, how to work through that?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. Oftentimes I'll go, if I'm just starting off and I have no baseline to work from. Let's just say I wanted to start with campaign disclosures, and I'll do a search there. I can come in here and I'll want to do code, and so now it's pulling in the code sections, and now I can start seeing what those code sections are that follow campaign disclosures. So if you don't have any good baseline to work from, you need to start somewhere. That's where I usually start. Is just doing the basic search and seeing what code sections come up with that. There's probably a more sophisticated and better way to do that, but that's what I've usually done. So great. Yeah, great question. Okay. Well, that's great. If there's not any other questions, I will hand it back over to you. Oh, it looks like Eric, you were waving your hand there.
Yeah, it looked like there was, somebody had asked, why do all of the bill file explanations just say to contact the sponsor? I'm not quite sure what that's in reference to.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that.
But that actually reminds me of something I was thinking of, because our webinar here today, it's journalists and non-journalists, like using the website. What's a good way to get contact a legislator? Say if you're just a citizen or you are a member of the media. Oh
yeah, that's great question. So we do provide all the contact information for legislators on the website. You can go to the roster here. If I want to talk with Luz Escamilla, I click here. There's her contact information. There's her email. Obviously, during the session, it becomes, extremely busy. There's a lot of emails that are coming in. And so that's where people like Andrea, who I think is on as well, is a great point of contact to work through our media requests, to get a hold of Andrea, and we can work through on the backside to try to make sure to get in touch with those that you want to get in touch with. So there's some options there for you. I missed something here too. This is, you go to Senator Escamilla, you want to know what bill she sponsors. There's a quick link right there, and you're able to look at to see the bills that she's sponsoring. There's different ways to do that, but that's one that's helpful. Shows the committees that she's on as well, if you want to quickly see what committee she's on. But yeah, doing the media contact, whether that's in the House or in the Senate, is a really good way. But if constituents and others as well can just go to the website and get contact information that way. So it looks like someone put the extension up on the chat room. So thanks for adding that. I should have had that ready, but that's great.
Well, thanks, Mark. This is great. I spend more time on the legislative website than I care to admit, and I still learned a few things. So I really appreciate you walking us through it. And so let's go. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
You're welcome. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Really appreciate you. Have a great rest of your day. And feel free to stay on if you'd like to. And so I'd love to kick it off to Ben and Katie and talk a little bit about this particular session, what kinds of things you're watching and what you're expecting to be some of the big issues. Katie, since you're unmuted, do you want to start us off some of the things that you've been looking at so far this year?
Oh yeah, where to begin? It's always, they cover everything you can think of. There's a bill for it. But I think some of the biggest things we'll, of course, be watching for, as always, the budget will be, they're going to spend, they have over 1.2 billion in extra money to spend this year. They're going to be figuring that out. I think there'll be a discussion about tax cuts, what that will look like. Governor Cox has proposed a grocery tax credit, but legislators seem to have more interest in income tax cuts. So there'll be discussion about that. Sounds like in speaking with legislative leaders, there's a lot of interest in prioritizing money for water and other infrastructure, education, transportation. Brad Wilson's come out strong early about the Great Salt Lake and wanting to prioritize that. I think we'll see discussion about affordable housing and homelessness. And I mean, that's just money. Like, we'll go into policy discussions too about some things I'll be watching for as any bills related to COVID-19 restrictions and local control. There's already been bills filed regarding, vaccines, vaccine passports, vaccine exemptions. We could go on and on and on, but that is a really tight first initial list that I've just rambled off. What about you, Ben? What do you think?
Oh, a lot of similar stuff. I do think, especially in light of recent events, we're going to see a lot more dealing with the pandemic, which a lot of lawmakers, I think, had hoped this would be behind us all and it'd be more normal session. And so far, it's not starting out that way, at least. I do think that you will see a lot dealing with water conservation. I've already seen a number of bills already being introduced. As we know, and I've said this before in my reporting and everything, the House Speaker's biggest constituent in terms of geographic size is the Great Salt Lake. So that's sort of a passion project of his. I think you're going to see a lot of money, at least 50 million allocated to the Great Salt Lake. You're going to see bills dealing with, there's already 2 bills at least that are going to deal with lawns, both incentivizing you to ditch your lawn and when they asked cities to review their ordinances, they discovered a lot of cities were requiring turf lawns, which is kind of interesting. And so I think you're going to see a movement to no longer require HOAs and cities to require lawns. So they can back off on that as a water conservation measure. The tax cut fight, I think we're going to see that's going to go on. You're going to see that pressure from community advocates who want elimination of the sales tax on food. You've got the governor's food tax credit. You've got the idea of the income tax cuts that Katie mentioned. You will see some air quality legislation, but I don't think you're going to see as much. I think that's going to take a backseat to the water conservation bills this year. But an interesting discussion, and the Transportation Committee is one of my favorite committees to follow because there's always just interesting things that are discussed in there. And one of them I think that we're going to see some bills on this year, and that I've been told we'll see bills on this year, and they're going to fight it out, is probably going to be road user mileage fees. And this deals with the sticky issue of electric vehicles. People are buying more electric vehicles, which is great for, air quality. However, the problem is the gas tax pays for road maintenance. Gas tax declines. You still got to fill those potholes. You still got to pave those roads. If electric vehicles aren't paying for that, how do you get people to pay their fair share? The idea of road user mileage, or charging you based upon how many miles you drive. It's not a overwhelmingly popular idea, but it's the fight that you may see actually held this year. Katie, let's see, you and I were in the press room the other day. We were talking about some of the other things. What else was there?
Death penalty is going to be a really interesting issue. Lowry Snow is backing that bill, and I think they have some powerful voices. So I think we can expect that to be pretty high profile.
Very high profile, I think. Yeah.
Yep. The LGBT issues, like Brooklyn's transgender girls sports bills back, a different version of that. So that will be discussed.
Representative Shipp's youth bill dealing with penalizing doctors, I think, is the version this year. Yeah. Those will be quite a fight, I think, to see in the session. Policing reform, I think that's we've got some interesting bills coming out of the House on that one right now.
No knock warrants, and so Gwen's sponsoring that. Also, Brooklyn has that use of force investigation with 180 days. I think there's also going to be discussion about increasing retirement benefits for public safety and firefighters. Some legislative leaders have kind of talked about that a little bit. I think we'll also see firearm legislation, optional firearm background checks. There's a whole list.
I think this one I get asked a lot about, which is cannabis legislation. I don't think you're going to see a lot this year making some dramatic changes to the cannabis program, in part because some of the things that lawmakers had already implemented are still just getting off the ground. So I think they would like to see some more data. At least Senator Vickers and Senator Escamilla had suggested to me that they'd like to get some more data. So I don't think you're going to see some major changes there, although they are going to address the issue. At least Senator Thatcher has proposed a bill about first responders and how you treat medical cannabis when it comes to that, and having municipalities recognize it, because the legislative intent is to recognize it like any other prescription drug. But there's some sticky issues as far as first responders and others. And then, of course, by extension, when the legislature imposes these things, how does it apply to private businesses as well? Let's see, liquor bills, that's another one. I don't think you'll see a significant changes in things. There is a lot of pressure from bar owners to change the bar license quotas to make more bar licenses available, but there seems to be some resistance amongst legislators to want to change that, but they may tweak things a little bit, try to move sort of the pieces around and try to make more licenses available without actually changing the quota. So you could see some tweaks there. Expect some grandma bills. I think particularly for the SBJ crowd, I think you will see some discussions about access to, say, police Garrity interviews. That's already an issue. I think you'll see some tweaks to open and public meetings and access to records. You may see those. What those look like, well, we'll have to stay tuned and see.
Another
Does
local,
that,
another local control issue I was interested in watching for is the discussion about affordable housing and zoning and what they do as far as how to require, if at all, or incentivize cities to zone for affordable housing. So I think that will be also a discussion.
growth is just going to be a big topic, I think, in general. Managing it, the House and Senate have made it their priorities, and I think that it's going to be, I don't know. I mean, double tracking front runner is a big one, and they're going to pay cash for it,
Mhm.
which means we're spending some stimulus money on that. I think you're going to have a lot of stimulus money on water projects, a lot of pipeline or piping projects, sewer pipes, water pipes, those kinds of things. A lot of money getting spent on those this year.
Mhm. Yeah.
So with all of these incredibly interesting, very important topics, how do you guys, when you're starting your day, when you're starting to look ahead to the session, how do you start to organize and think about how do you approach a given day, or how do you approach, like, how do you prioritize? What are some of the strategies that you guys use to look ahead and think about what are going to be the subjects you'll cover in a given day or a given session?
Well, what's the big debate of the day? I mean, if there's a veil, what are people talking about? Of course, we'll be looking at the committee hearing schedule to see what is going to be the hot topic on the committee agendas. And then we have to decide which committee to go to. So, I mean, that's kind of where it starts for me, and try to just stay in touch with what are people buzzing about that day.
And I just kind of take it as it comes as well. I
Yeah.
think that's, every day I come in thinking, hey, maybe I'll hit up this committee hearing and see what the debate or discussion is on this bill or that bill. And then it often changes because, yes, sometimes there's a lively floor debate about an issue that you weren't really expecting, and you check it out, and that becomes more pressing or something. Or sometimes there's just a bill introduced that's, a big deal that impacts a lot of people that you need to report on.
Yeah, you have to be ready to be dynamic and move and shift gears depending on if something surprising happens. You just never know.
Sometimes you're literally moving fast.
Running.
We have been known to sprint from the House chamber to the Senate chamber, back to the House chamber.
Definitely.
Well, and I want to share for everybody too, one of my favorite ways to use the website is you can also follow a lot of this floor debate live. You can follow it remotely, and so that you can be there. Of course, it's the public space. It's our lawmakers, and anybody can come to the Capitol and can be in that public seating zone, especially. But of course, we all have many commitments in our lives. So whether you're a journalist, and especially with the pandemic, so whether you're a journalist or a regular person, I really like this link that I shared in the chat that you can. This is a floor calendar link, but through there you can get to watch live floor debate if you expand that little video tab too. So I think that's another way to really watch what's going on, even if you can't be there live.
I do want to give, at least for the reading calendars, because things move very dynamically and very quickly in session, especially when you're on the floor. Just because something is listed as coming up next does not always guarantee it actually comes up next. Things happen, bills get circled, there's motions to saunter, there's a lot of things to happen. So just know that if you think, oh, that bill is 3 bills away, that bill I'm tracking, it could be next, or it could be tomorrow, really.
Or it could just never come back because they circle it forever.
Well, what's one of the issues that you think is going to be the biggest one? We can dive in a little bit for people. Taxes, that'll be a big deal. What are some of the people to watch, the things to watch as we look at taxes upcoming?
You have 3 different income tax proposals. That is really interesting, because I wonder if at some point the majority caucuses are just going to lock all the lawmakers in a room and make them fight it out over who's gets there. The Senate Majority Leader has proposed so right now the state portion of the income tax is 4.95%. The Senate Majority Leader has proposed going to 4.9%. The Utah Taxpayers Association, which is really big on the income tax cut, thinks that they can do better than that. And they're supporting Senator McKay's version, which goes to 4.6%. Then you have Representative Segmiller in the House, who has one at 4.75%. The Speaker, the Senate President are all very much in favor of an income tax cut. So it's going to be, I suspect that by the end of the session, things are going to wind up somewhere in the middle, because there's just a lot of money coming into the state, a lot of revenues, things are looking good economically speaking. So there's a lot of pressure to give some back to the citizens of Utah. Then you have Representative Lesser and Representative Weeks-Rohner, who are proposing food tax reductions or eliminations. I haven't seen Representative Weeks-Rohner's bill yet, so I don't know what she's.
Generally speaking, they tend to have a little more benefit for lower income folks, right? Like I'm sure it's there, but the food tax ones tend to benefit lower income people a little bit more.
Well, that's their argument, at least on this. And then what's going to be interesting is the governor has proposed a food tax credit, and I'm not sure. We'll have to see where the legislative priorities are and how the caucuses feel about that to see if there's an appetite to grant that. Senator McKay also told me the other day he is looking at teaming up with Representative Winder for an earned income tax credit to kind of offset any negative impacts from or potentially negative impacts from a flat rate reduction. But obviously this affects every single Utahn. It's a big deal. And, it's kind of incumbent on us to try to explain why tax policy is really important.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting. When I talked with President Adams, he was kind of interested in going. He talked about maybe landing at 4.85. Well, they've set aside 160 million for a tax cut already. That number could grow. They might do a mix. They might do something more targeted, like a grocery tax credit that the governor's proposed. They might do the income tax. They might do both. It's really hard to say what's going to happen, because 45 days is a long time in legislative time, and however much money they decide to set aside for a tax cut could definitely change between now and then. So we'll have to see.
The other one that I think is going to be really interesting that you guys mentioned and might be worth chatting a little more in depth about is Great Salt Lake. The House Speaker convened this summit, and I've never seen him do that on any issue. So it's clear it's something that has become kind of a big deal for him. And of course, the Salt Lake is in trouble. It's been shrinking and things like that. Do you guys have a sense of where things might go, what we might see in the session on that one?
Oh, I think you're going to see definitely at least 50 million for it appropriated, which has already kind of been set aside. I think you're going to see a lot of the focus is just on the water conservation bills to make sure that you get water into the lake. Agriculture optimization was something the speaker identified as a big priority. And that is if agriculture, which is a big water user, has better technologies, better methods for being able to grow crops, that means more water going ultimately into water bodies, reservoirs, lakes, and of course the Great Salt Lake. So I think that's going to be a big one. Secondary water metering is another huge one. And I think that's going to be a big one, just in terms of people will be able to see. It does, I think, as it's been explained to me, and I could be wrong on this, it does give the potential to charge people based upon how much water they use outdoors. But really the goal is, once you see how much water you use, you go, oh, geez, that's a lot of water I'm wasting. And you kind of have a self-correcting behavior that there's going to be a dramatic expansion of secondary water metering.
Interesting. Oh, this is a good question. Do we think Silicon Slopes is going to be pushing for any particular issues this year?
That's a group that's making a lot of money in a very little amount of time. And I think what you will see is perhaps maybe they watch and see what happens. They have identified their priorities before. And they, at their own legislative breakfast, they identified they have had concerns about recruitment retention. They've had concerns about certain culture war type bills. They've had concerns about liquor legislation. I'd say stay tuned to see how much they engage in this. They did form a political action committee, and that political action committee is raising money So it could be interesting, particularly leading the session going into an election year, just seeing what happens and how the tech industry reacts to all of that.
Any thoughts on that one, Katie?
I mean, yeah, kind of related, but kind of not, is I think we can expect to see some talk about putting money toward Point of the Mountain development. That's going to be a big investment piece. I mean,
That's where the prison would be, right? That's that old area. That's where the prison is moving
former
away from.
prison site. The big Point of the Mountain development that's being proposed, that was listed in this the House Majority Caucus's priority list as under generational investments, along with the inland port. And I think we'll need to watch for how much money they set aside for that. They're gearing up for, putting even more in to help develop that land.
I love this last question from Mackenzie as we kind of wind down our session a little bit here. The session is a lot of work, long days we end up working, and how do you get through that? What are some of your coping mechanisms or relaxation? How do you sort of get through this crazy 45 days?
Are we the best people to ask this, Ben? Do you think we've figured this out?
I mean,
I don't know.
Katie, I always feel like you always have good ways to de-stress and things.
I think no one really truly figures that out completely. We all know like the session is just a lot of work and it can be overwhelming, but you have to prioritize, what you can't cover it all. Prioritize the biggest issues, do your best, remember to eat during the day, and just try to go home at a reasonable time. I try to do yoga at night when I'm really stressed out, but I don't have all the answers. Everyone has to figure that out on their own, I think.
Go take in that beautiful view when the sun sets.
Yes. Breathe fresh air when you walk outside when it's dark, and appreciate how beautiful the Capitol is. Yeah.
I do. You never underestimate the power of a good gin and tonic too.
Yes.
But honestly, I think those are all great ideas. I have to remember to eat and remember to exercise, just because, get those endorphins going and just, try to take it as it comes.
Oh, and this is a great one from Chris. Maybe we have time for one more question, I hope, Eric. And this is a good one from Chris. What are your best strategies for contacting legislators?
Well, it's gotten a little bit more difficult now that we aren't able to go onto the floor amid COVID. They kind of don't allow that anymore, but try to stay in touch, like through text messages, to try to catch them right after floor time ends. Also, just trying to track them down in hallways. You can find them that way, or just know what their schedule is. If you really don't know where to find a lawmaker, you could, what committee are they in, and what is their schedule, and try to stake them out the other side of the door that way once the committee's done. So it can be tricky, especially during COVID times. But you try everything. You try texting, calling, tracking them down in person. If you really need to get a hold of them, you just try everything. And
of course, folks like Andrea too, especially if you're remote.
How could I forget to mention Andrea?
So Andrea's with the media team on the Senate side, and there are some, she has some cohorts on the House side, and they can help too. There's none of these strategies work every single time. You have to sort of layer. Mm-hmm. And if you're remote, Chris, in St. George, text messaging can work great, and also mentioning if it is your local lawmaker, mentioning that in the message. But kindness and persistence, I think, are always good baselines to start with in my experience. But Ben, we know you're great at finding people who, whether they want to be found or not. Any thoughts that you've got to add there?
I feel like you and Katie have just, encapsulated all of it. That's just kind of what you have to do, is just try a number of different strategies to just try to talk to lawmakers. So it's a very busy time for them. They've got a lot to do in a little amount of time. So pack your patience.
I agree with the layered approach description, Lindsay.
Well, thanks, everyone. I'll hand it back over to Eric to wind us down, I think, right? But thanks for coming. And if we can help with anything else at Utah SPJ, we've got an email address and things like that, so we can pass along other questions and help the best we can. But we really appreciate everyone who's here. Thank you.
Yeah, that was
for having
yeah, that was a great event. Thanks everyone for showing up. And some people have been asking, we are recording this, so got your email. We'll send you out a link when we get it uploaded. And yeah, I got utahspj.com. And thanks again also folks supporting Utah Investigative Journalism Project. We're really glad to have you here. I think this was a really great event for journalists and members of the public, just to really get into the nuts and bolts of like the session that's coming up, and we really appreciate everyone's time. But I think with that, we'll call it a webinar, and thank you, everyone. Okay.